The year is 1870. Our story takes place in a small village nestled in the once tranquil region of Alsace-Lorraine. This picturesque land, known for its rolling hills and vineyards, found itself caught in the throes of the Franco-Prussian War. The rumble of distant cannons served as a constant reminder of the conflict raging beyond the village borders. For the villagers, life had taken on a disquieting rhythm, a blend of everyday routines punctuated by the fear of the unknown. The once vibrant marketplace, filled with the chatter of vendors and the laughter of children, now bore a subdued air. The thud of soldiers' boots on cobblestone streets had become a familiar sound. The war had cast a long shadow over the village, and its inhabitants awaited their fate with bated breath. Amidst this atmosphere of uncertainty, a young boy named Franz found himself struggling with a familiar enemy: his own reluctance to attend school. Franz, like many boys his age, found the allure of the outdoors far more enticing than the confines of a classroom. The chirping of birds, the rustling of leaves, the endless possibilities that nature held. These whispered promises of adventure that books could not compete with. Yet on this particular morning, there was a strange stillness in the air, an unfamiliar quiet that seemed to weigh heavily on Franz's young heart.
I was not a particularly studious child. I found solace in the simplicity of nature, in the freedom of roaming the fields, and in the camaraderie of my friends. School, with its rigid schedules and demanding lessons, often felt like a prison to my carefree spirit. I much preferred the company of dragonflies and butterflies to the company of verbs and fractions. On this day, the allure of skipping school was particularly strong.
The day's lesson was on participles, a grammar rule that Franz found particularly perplexing and utterly uninteresting. He knew his teacher, Monsieur Hamel, would not be pleased with his lack of preparation. Monsieur Hamel, a stern man with a reputation for rigorous teaching, intimidated Franz. The thought of facing his teacher's disappointment, coupled with his lack of enthusiasm for participles, made the idea of playing truant quite tempting. However, something in the air, a silence that was both unsettling and intriguing, drew him towards the schoolhouse.
As I made my way through the village, I was struck by the unusual quiet that had descended upon it. Gone was the usual cacophony of morning activity, the clang of the blacksmith's hammer, the lively banter of women washing clothes by the fountain, the boisterous shouts of children playing in the streets. Even the birds seemed to be singing in hushed tones. The silence was eerie, almost deafening in its intensity. It was as if the village itself was holding its breath, bracing for something momentous.
Franz noticed a group of villagers huddled together near the bulletin board, their faces etched with anxiety. He had seen similar gatherings before, always followed by news of the war, news that cast a pall over the village. The gravity of their expressions, the hushed whispers exchanged, filled Franz with a sense of foreboding. He quickened his pace, a knot of apprehension tightening in his stomach. As he approached the schoolhouse, he noticed something unusual. The usually deserted courtyard was teeming with people.
The sight that greeted me as I entered the schoolroom was unlike anything I had ever witnessed. The room, typically filled with the cacophony of students and the scratching of chalk on slate, was shrouded in an almost reverent silence. The villagers, who normally only set foot in the schoolhouse for town meetings or special occasions, occupied the back benches, their faces etched with a mixture of sadness and defiance.
Monsieur Hamel, his usually stern demeanor softened by a palpable sadness, was not at his desk. Instead, he stood ramrod straight, dressed in his finest Sunday attire, his gaze sweeping over the room with an uncharacteristic tenderness. A large map of France, its colors vibrant against the drab walls, hung behind him.
Franz's eyes fell upon a notice, freshly written in black ink, posted on the bulletin board. It was then that the realization struck him, swift and sharp as a shard of glass. This was no ordinary day. It was the last day French would be taught in their beloved school.
Monsieur Hamel, his voice thick with emotion, announced that this would be our last French lesson. The news, though not entirely unexpected, landed like a blow to the stomach. I felt a surge of guilt course through me. I had always taken my language for granted, viewing it as just another subject to be endured rather than a precious inheritance to be cherished.
The usually strict teacher had undergone a transformation. Gone was the impatient scowl, the sharp reprimands. In its place, Franz saw a deep love for his language, a profound sadness at the thought of being separated from it. Monsieur Hamel spoke with a passion that Franz had never witnessed before. He spoke of the beauty of the French language, its clarity, its precision. He urged his students to guard it, to keep it alive in their hearts.
I listened with a newfound attentiveness, the weight of Monsieur Hamel's words settling deep within me. For the first time, I truly understood the significance of language. It was more than just a means of communication. It was the embodiment of our culture, our history, our very identity.
The familiar French words he had often mumbled and mispronounced, suddenly took on a new meaning. They were a lifeline to the past, a link to his ancestors, a testament to the richness of his heritage.
As Monsieur Hamel wrote "Vive la France" on the blackboard, his hand trembling with emotion, I felt a surge of patriotism well up within me. I understood now the significance of those words, the depth of love and pride they conveyed. The lesson that day went beyond participles and grammar rules. It was a lesson in love, loss, and the enduring power of language. It was a lesson that would stay with me long after the last word was spoken.
The dismissal bell rang, its sound sharper, more final than ever before. As Franz walked out of the schoolhouse, he couldn't shake off the feeling of profound loss. It was as if a part of him, a part he hadn't even realized existed, had been severed. The world outside seemed different, the silence now imbued with a sense of finality.
The sounds of Prussian soldiers marching through the streets, their guttural commands echoing through the village, served as a stark reminder of the new reality.
The last French lesson had been more than just a lesson. It had been a farewell to my childhood, to the familiar rhythms of my life, to the comforting embrace of my native language. As I walked towards home, my heart heavy with regret, I made a silent vow. I would never again take my language for granted. I would cherish it, nurture it, and pass it on to future generations. The last French lesson might be over, but for me, the journey of rediscovering my language, my heritage, and my own identity had just begun.